Hi, I'm Michael, and this is Maker's Workshop. I'm kind of a big deal. Today, we're gonna make a laundry sorter because, well, our basement's a mess. Let's get started. I started by laying out my material to see what I was working with. I went with 3/4 inch plywood because this is a functional piece, but I wanted it to be able to take a beating. I was using the factory edge as much as possible in an effort to simplify the build, but I marked where I wanted to make a cut on each side of the bin and then cut both along both marks using my circular saw. I added a rabbet along every side that was becoming a joint later on to increase the surface area for the glue up. Brooke gave me a hand to balance the larger pieces. Now that all the rabbets are in place, we're just going to dry fit it together to make sure everything fits. In theory, this should have gone together really easily. We pulled it all apart to check that our corners were all square. And surprisingly, they were.
It should be good enough though. Oh no. Look at that.
Alright, so it wasn't lining up, and that's because we have one board that was miscut. It is a little bit longer than the rest of them. So luckily that is an easy fix. We just need to trim that one board down just a little bit and then put the rabbet back on. Alright, so for the purpose of this project, it is square enough. If we were doing a finished piece of furniture, we'd probably finagle it a little bit more. And now we're going to go back over to the router table. We're going to switch things around, and we're just going to route a couple of grooves into the back, the front, and the bottom so that we can have movable dividers.
Here.
And then quarter
And
board?
then, yeah.
And then split again?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah, 'cause
split in
that's
half,
totally-
half, so you have quarters or thirds, and then you can kind of play with it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that a little bit excessive? Yeah.
We finally realized that our best work doesn't happen past 2 a.m. and went to sleep. The next morning, I calculated out the measurements for my dividers. I wanted to have the option of splitting the large bin into quarters, thirds, or a combination of both. I set my router length and then started by doing a pass on the front piece. I rotated my board to get a channel the same distance from the other end. I repeated this on the bottom and back pieces for this first measurement. I cycled through my measurements until I had all of my channels routed out at the distances I wanted them. I quickly hand sanded all of the channels to smooth them off, and then it was time to glue this thing up. I wanted a sturdy finished piece, so I loaded Titebond 3 into all of the rabbets. And then I put it together and clamped it well to dry overnight. Good. Using a random orbital sander, I pulled off any extra glue drips. I wanted to add casters to the bottom of the bin to make it easy to move around, so I measured out where I needed to drill holes to install those on the bottom of the bucket. These went on easily with some nuts, bolts, and washers. And to add some more sturdiness, I decided to take the time to add reinforcements to the corners of the bin. I set my table saw to cut a 45-degree angle and passed a pine board I had laying around through, rotating it with each pass to create long triangular strips that would fit into the corners. I glued it in with more Type-On 3, and then added some screws as well. And then quickly sawed off the excess with my pull saw. I wanted the dividers to be 1/2-inch plywood so they'd be nice and easy to handle. I measured out the width I needed to fit into the routed out channels and cut some plywood accordingly. To get the proper angle on the top, I used a large machinist square to pencil where the cuts needed to be on each divider. At this point, I was down to the finishing steps. Brooke did up the design for our Carvey CNC router for some signs to label the sections. We went with lights, darks, and delicates, but you could do whatever is most functional for you. We decided to just carve these out of some leftover 3/4-inch plywood scraps and then sand it down after. It gave an okay finished look, but if I were to do this again, I think a two-tone HDPE might have been an easier material to work with for a very similar look. To paint these, Brooke filled the letter with acrylic paint. The key to a smooth end result is to feather out any heavier sections of paint. And then to finish it off, Brooke went in with black paint for the rest of the sign. The key to a sharp paint job is sponging on multiple very light coats. This keeps the black paint from seeping into the lettering. The finishing touch was a generous coat of a spray-on glossy varnish. Once dried, Brooke used a staple gun to quickly add twine to each for hanging. To finish off the dividers, I routed a 45-degree chamfer onto all of the sides' edges. I then cleaned off the bin with paint thinner to prep for the finish. I went with a glossy wipe-on poly for this. The gloss will be easier to clean down the road, and I wanted something that would dry quickly. I wanted to be able to quickly and easily change out the signs, so I used command strips to hang them. And that's that. The laundry sorter is done, and it's going to make a big difference in the basement, keeping the laundry room a little more organized. You could easily do this same project, switch the signs out, and use it for other storage solutions as well. Things like recycling or trash bins, or material storage, or any number of things. I'm Michael. This is Baker's Workshop. Why are you laughing at me?